deep inside a rock shelter in southern France. Archaeologists just uncovered a skeleton that has rewritten everything we thought we knew about how the Neanderthals disappeared. The bones are 42,000 years old. They belong to one of the very last Neanderthal men who ever walked the earth. And when scientists finally sequenced his DNA in a laboratory at the University of Copenhagen, they discovered something that should have been impossible. This man had been living completely alone for 50,000 years. Not him personally, his entire bloodline, his entire family, his entire community, cut off from the rest of the Neanderthal world for 50,000 years, while other Neanderthal groups lived just a few days' walk away. And that single piece of evidence, found in 2024 and analyzed throughout 2025 and 2026, has finally cracked open the greatest mystery in human prehistory. Why did the Neanderthals really vanish? For over 100 years, your textbooks have told you they were primitive, that modern humans outsmarted them, that climate killed them, that they were simply too dumb, too weak, too slow to survive. But every single one of those explanations has just been quietly destroyed by a series of discoveries that almost no mainstream documentary will tell you about. By the end of this video, you will know what really happened to the Neanderthals, and why what scientists have now confirmed in 2026 is far more disturbing than anything your school ever taught you. The story begins in a cave system in France called Grotte Mandrin. Archaeologists first found this site decades ago, but in September of 2024, a team led by researcher Ludwig Slimek made a discovery that shocked the entire field of prehistoric archaeology. Inside the rock shelter, they uncovered the remains of a late Neanderthal man, and they gave him a name. They called him Thorin. What made Thorin so important was not just his age, it was what his bones were hiding inside them. When scientists extracted DNA from his teeth and ran it through the most advanced genome sequencing labs in Europe, the results came back. And the researchers couldn't believe what they were seeing. Thorin's genome showed massive inbreeding. His parents were closely related. His grandparents were closely related. And the genetic signature inside his cells proved that his community had not exchanged a single member with any other Neanderthal group for over 50,000 years. Half of all recorded human history, spent in total isolation. But Thorin wasn't alone in this strange story. In March of 2026, just 2 months ago, another team of scientists at the University of Tübingen in Germany announced an even bigger discovery. They had analyzed DNA from 10 new Neanderthal skeletons, recovered from caves and dig sites across Belgium, France, Germany, and Serbia. And every single one of those skeletons told the same chilling story. Small communities, isolated families, bloodlines that had been cut off from each other for tens of thousands of years. Researcher Cosimo Post, who led the Tübingen study, revealed that around 65,000 years ago, all surviving Neanderthals in Europe had retreated to a single tiny refuge in what is now southwestern France. From there, they slowly spread back out across the continent. But they never reconnected. They lived in pockets, isolated bubbles, like islands of humans drifting further and further apart. And here is the part that no museum will ever put on a display panel. While the Neanderthals were drifting into isolation, something completely different was happening just a few hundred miles to the south, in caves across the Middle East, like the Tinchamet cave site in central Israel. Archaeologists working between 2024 and 2025 uncovered something that completely shatters the idea that early humans and Neanderthals were enemies. They found burials, they found ochre body paint, they found stone tools shared between both species. Early Homo sapiens and Neanderthals were not at war with each other. They were trading, they were exchanging, they were sometimes even living in the same caves, side by side. And this is where the real discovery comes in, the one that finally cracked the case. In February of 2026, researcher Ariane Burke at the University of Montreal published a study that changed everything. Her team did something nobody had ever tried before. They borrowed a method from modern conservation biology, the same kind of method scientists use today to predict why endangered species like tigers and elephants go extinct. They built a digital reconstruction of Ice Age Europe. They mapped every known Neanderthal archaeological site. They mapped every known Homo sapiens site. And then they did the impossible. They mapped the invisible social networks connecting both species. What they discovered will probably never appear in your child's school textbook. The Homo sapiens had a network, a massive interconnected web stretching across thousands of miles of Europe and Asia. When climate shifted in one valley, relatives in another valley sent help. When a new tool was invented in one cave, it spread to caves 1,000 miles away within a few generations. When food disappeared in one region, people knew exactly where to migrate, but the Neanderthals had no such web. Their groups lived like isolated tribes on small islands. They knew the people in their own valley. They knew the people in the next valley. But beyond that, They had nothing. No long-distance partners, no backup, no safety net. Burke described it in her own words. She said these social networks act as a safety net, allowing humans to exchange information, form partnerships, and access other territories when crisis hits. The Neanderthals had no safety net, and so when the climate began to shift violently between 50 and 40,000 years ago, they had nowhere to run, no information being shared, no relatives waiting for them in distant valleys, no web of connections to fall back on. They simply ran out of options. But here is where the mystery turns disturbing. And this is the part that mainstream documentaries refuse to show you. In December of 2024, a major study was published in the journal Science by a team analyzing 58 ancient genomes, and the results revealed something almost no one talks about. The Neanderthals did not disappear silently. For 7,000 years, between 50,000 and 43,000 years ago, they were having children with Homo sapiens, constantly, across Europe and the Middle East, generation after generation. And then in February of 2026, researchers at the University of Pennsylvania analyzed the X chromosome data from Neanderthal genomes and discovered something extraordinary. The mating pattern was extremely one-sided. Neanderthal males were fathering hybrid children with Homo sapiens females over and over for thousands of years. Their X chromosomes carry 62% more modern human DNA than the rest of their genome, which is statistically impossible unless this pattern was happening systematically. For a very long time, the Neanderthals didn't just go extinct, they were absorbed into us, right now. If you're watching this and you are not of pure African descent, you carry between 1 and 2% Neanderthal DNA inside your own cells. East Asian populations carry slightly more. Your immune system, your skin pigmentation, your hair traits, even certain pain receptors and sleep patterns in your body. All of them come from genes that were inherited from Neanderthals over 40,000 years ago. A 2020 study by the Max Planck Institute confirmed that 30% of women in Europe carry a Neanderthal progesterone receptor variant, which helps them have more successful pregnancies. You are, quite literally, part Neanderthal. But the most shocking discoveries about who the Neanderthals really were came from a series of archaeological digs that almost no one in mainstream media is talking about. In 2024, archaeologists working at a site called Neumarkt Nord in Germany announced that they had found something extraordinary. 125,000 years ago, Neanderthals were running what scientists are now calling a fat factory. It was an organized, industrial, systematic operation. They processed the bones of at least 172 large animals, including ancient forest elephants, to extract bone grease for food. This kind of organized behavior was happening 100,000 years before Homo sapiens did anything similar anywhere on Earth. In April of 2025, archaeologists in Russia announced the discovery of a bone spear point at the Mezmayskaya cave site. It was made by Neanderthals between 70 and 80,000 years ago. They had hafted it onto a wooden shaft using natural tar. They had fire hardened it, and microscopic analysis showed they had even tried to repair it when it broke during a hunt. This is engineering, this is technology, this is intelligence. And then there is the evidence that finishes off the old textbook story for good. In caves across Spain at sites like La Pasiega, Maltravieso, and Ardales, scientists used a dating method called uranium-thorium analysis to test the red paintings on the cave walls. The results came back in study after study throughout 2024 and 2025. The paintings are at least 64,000 years old. That means they were created 22,000 years before Homo sapiens even arrived in Spain. The Neanderthals were painting cave art, building organized industrial sites, engineering weapons with adhesives and repair techniques, burying their dead with care at sites like Shanidar Cave in Iraq, and in May of 2026. A brand new study published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences confirmed that Neanderthal brain structures were not less developed than ours. The differences between Neanderthal brains and modern human brains are smaller than the differences between two modern human populations living right now. So why did your textbook tell you they were primitive cavemen? Because the truth is much harder to accept. The Neanderthals were not less intelligent. They were not less capable. They were not less human. They lost because they were alone. Small, isolated communities, inbred families, disconnected from each other across vast distances, no safety net, no web of communication, no backup when the climate turned against them. When Homo sapiens arrived in Europe with their continent-wide social networks, their massive trading systems, their ability to share information across thousands of miles, the Neanderthals simply could not keep up. Some were absorbed into Homo sapiens through interbreeding, others starved. Others died of diseases their immune systems had never seen before. Others vanished in tiny, isolated valleys where no one was left to bury them. And the lead researcher of the 2026 Montreal study said something that should make every modern human stop and think. She said, humans have always been sensitive to environmental variability throughout our entire history. In other words, what killed the Neanderthals is not so different from the kind of pressure modern humanity is facing right now. Isolated communities, divided societies, inability to adapt fast enough when the world begins to change. The Neanderthals were us, just without the network. Their world disappeared. Their language disappeared. Their 300,000-year civilization disappeared. But their DNA, their genes, their immune systems, their pain receptors, their pregnancy hormones, their hair and skin and sleep patterns, all of it lives on. Inside billions of people walking the earth right now. You carry them inside you. So the next time you walk past a museum exhibit showing a hunched, dumb, grunting caveman labeled Neanderthal, remember what the bones inside Grotte Mandrin revealed. Remember what the DNA inside Thorin's teeth proved. Remember what the cave paintings in Spain confirmed. They were not primitive. They were just alone. And the silence of the Neanderthals, echoing across 40,000 years of forgotten caves and buried bones, may be the most important warning the past has ever sent us.